All right. I think we're live. Just checking in with my goofy technology here. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. We took a week off last week for Thanksgiving, and now I thought I would share another bagpiping mini lesson here with you. And we're going to try... I'm going to try pointing one of these cameras at my screen to see how that goes. But anyway, today's topic is going to be bagpipe sight reading. Okay. Now, if someone came up to you and said the following, Andrew, I just can't juggle 5 balls in the air no matter how hard I practice, right? That's what they came up to you, and then that's what they said. What would you think about that? And if you've ever seen me try to juggle, it's pretty embarrassing. My brother's pretty decent at it. I'm pretty bad at it. But I'm not a juggler, but I would think to myself, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense that you can't juggle 5 balls at a time because 5 balls is a lot, right? Just blatantly obvious delivery of that was purposeful. However, okay, now that would seem silly that someone who had never practiced, right? It would seem obvious and it would seem silly to think that they could juggle 5 balls at a time, right? However, pipers all over the world regularly say, just give me the audio of the music because I just can't sight read, or I just can't sight read fast enough, and that's why I don't learn more tunes, right? So they'll regularly say, I can't sight read bagpipe music no matter how hard I try, right? And then to which I'm going to say the same thing I said when someone came up to me and talked about how they can't juggle 5 balls at a time. I'm going to say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. So how do we learn how to sight read in the realm of bagpiping? Okay. And it's going to be, let's just follow through with this analogy here. It's going to be the same way that we would learn to juggle. All right. When you learn to juggle, you start with 1 ball at a time and you get good at it. Maybe I'm just speculating here, but you probably try to get good at throwing the ball up and down and catching it with your hands using just your peripheral vision, something like that. I'm just speculating here. All right, so now how do we learn to sight read? Well, we're going to learn the same basic way. We're going to start with ball number 1. All right, now ball number 1, okay, we have this tune here in front of us. Ball number 1 is going to be starting with the rhythm of the tune. Okay, so I've actually prepared ahead of time here the rhythm line of the tune. I'm going to add it into our screen. Hopefully you can see that. Underneath the tune, I've written out the basic rhythm of the tune underneath, just all on the same line. No grace notes, no embellishments, just the basic rhythm of the tune here. Now, if you can't sight read the rhythm, all right, and just keep in mind, you can't sight read it yet. You're going to be able to when you practice it. So this isn't a reflection on you or where you are. This is just me working through some logic, okay? If you can't sight read the rhythm yet, it doesn't make a lot of sense that you should worry about a whole lot else, right? So if we can't sight read the rhythm, then it doesn't really make sense to try to add in all the notes yet, or add in the grace notes or even the embellishments, okay? So we're going to take a tune that we're trying to learn and we're going to turn it into rhythm only like we've seen here. Now, anyone can do this. It's very, very simple. All right. And then we're going to clap the rhythm. Now, ideally, in my opinion, a metronome is something that you should use, but a lot of pipers aren't ready to commit to that yet, which is fine. So can we clap the rhythm? Here's how I would do this. Okay. And you can clap it any way that you want, but the main idea is that we're able to get these rhythms so that they feel natural and comfortable for us to play, and preferably they're natural and comfortable for us to clap as well. Okay, so it might sound something like this. You'll notice I got rid of the pickup notes. Okay, pickup notes are cool. We'll come back to them later. But for right now, sometimes that can sort of confuse the process. Okay, and you can spend more time wondering how the pickup notes are supposed to go than you actually spend working on the rhythm of the bulk of the tune. So I start by taking out the pickup notes. I'm just going to start right on that note. It's going to go something like this. Ready and a go, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 1, E and a 2. Now that doesn't really kind of make sense because we're in a 2/4 march here, and a 1, E and a 2. Maybe I was going a little too fast. It's another reason a metronome might help us here. I'm just going to slow it down a smidge. Here I go. 1, E and a 2, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a not worried about expression or anything yet. Just clapping the basic rhythms. E and a 1, E and a 2, E and a 1, E and a 2. Now, if you are already a rhythm aficionado or a bagpipe teacher or something, maybe you teach rhythm in a different way, and the exact way that you teach rhythm is not important to me. Okay, you can teach it any way you want. Anything that works is good. The idea here is that the rhythm is not difficult for you to do, and you can sight read that fairly easily, and you can get into the rhythm of that fairly easily. That is juggling ball number 1 when it comes to sight reading. So instead of sitting down in front of a new tune and trying to juggle all 5 balls, how about the next tune you learn, start with the rhythm first? Okay, now juggling ball number 2. The question is, can we play the big notes? Okay, and by this I mean, can we play just the basic melody without embellishments or fancy grace note combinations? Okay, so can you play a simplified version of the score? If you can't sight read the big notes, it doesn't make much sense that you could somehow magically sight read all the big notes and the rhythms with the embellishments in addition to all of that, does it? It doesn't make sense. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to put together a super simple version of the score and make sure that we feel comfortable sight reading that. Now, there are some details here that are worth exploring, like because it doesn't really, we're not going to be able to play this with 0 grace notes, so we have to add some in. What you'll find in this score is that G grace notes are going to mark out all the downbeats and offbeats, okay? But other than that, there's nothing else in this, okay? And we want to make sure that we can do this simplified setting really well also. So here's my screen. You'll see I've added in, above the rhythm line, I've added in the simplified line here. And you'll see the G grace notes, as I was mentioning, are just on the beats and off beats in this case. And it's going to sound something like this. And again, a metronome is going to help keep us under control, not rushing ahead. But we want to make sure we could sight read something along these lines before we do too much else. Okay? So here's what that might sound like. Ready and go, E and. By the way, it's really important that I mention again, I'm not worried about expression yet, right? I'm not worried about the finer points. I'm not worried about the call and answer response. I'm worried about doing the basic rhythms and the basic notes well. That's it. And I'm worried about sight reading my way through it in this particular application. Here we go. And go. And... something like that, right? Simplified score. If you want to simplify it slightly differently, that's totally not the point, right? You can simplify it any way you would like to. But then what we come up with, we can work on sight reading that. By the way, another great sight reading tip or a way to reduce the number of juggling balls is don't ask yourself to play quite as much. What if you just sight read 2 bars, get that really good before moving on? That's obviously also a good idea. Now, as we continue our sight reading journey here, what's the next juggling ball? Here's what it's not. Okay, we are not now going to skip ahead to the fully embellished score. Not going to do that. Okay, that's a lot of different embellishments. Okay, and I know a lot of advanced players who don't necessarily play all these embellishments well by default. Okay, so and maybe possibly myself included. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to add 1 ball at a time, not several. So for example, in the case of this tune, that might mean, what if we just take all the D throws now, okay? And what if we add the D throws in, okay? We're going to add the D throws into the simplified setting, and that's just one possibility. You can choose whatever you want, okay? But now I'm going to add my D throws in. I hope I didn't make any copy and pasting errors there. We will soon find out. Okay, but hopefully you can sort of see on the screen here now that I've added in some D throws to the score. So after thinking about the D throw and how I'm going to play it really well, okay, now I'm going to sight read with just the D throws in. Everything else stays the same as before. Might sound like, I'll do a little bit of it. right? I accidentally added in a high A doubling there. Whoops. But there you go. Done, not perfect. That's the message here. Okay. And then from there, what might I do next? I don't know. I would pick the next most important hanging fruit here, like maybe the terreluith there in the third bar or something like that, so on and so forth. Okay. Anyway, I'm dragging on here already. Let's conclude this basic idea. If you want to learn to juggle 5 balls at a time, you have to be willing to start with 1 ball, and as you become fluent with 1 ball, then we'll gradually introduce more. Okay. And the same is going to be true for sight reading. Get good at ball number 1. And I explained how rhythm in this case is ball number 1. Can we do the basic rhythm of the tune? If you can't, okay, well, let's get good at that before we start to ask ourselves to be amazing sight readers. Then we're going to add in ball number 2 from there, okay, which is the basic, big notes, so to speak. Okay. And then ball 3 might be one embellishment type. Okay. And then before you know it, okay, over time, as you get better and better at these, and as you do more and more of it, over time, you will get to the point where you can just pick up a tune like this and start on the top line. Okay. But you're only going to get there through building up those essential skills. Okay. And the more mindful you can be about that, I think the sooner you'll get to the goal. I think that's true. Okay. And it's all about exposure and trying it, but not just doing a lot of it, but doing a lot of it in a common sense way. Okay. That is my quick tour of how I choose to think about sight reading. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have different ways or tips and tricks that you can provide, we would love if you commented on this video and gave us some feedback. That would be super cool. But in the meantime, thanks again for checking out these little mini lesson series that we do here at the dojo, and we will see you guys next week for another one.